الحمد لله رب العالمين والآكبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. My respected teachers, Mufti Muhammad Shakir Saab, Maulana Shoaib Saab, and my brothers in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah. Today is our second workshop, our second session, where we are going through the essentials of the prayer. And Alhamdulillah, last week we started with the prerequisites, but before we go any further, we'll begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Maulana Shoaib Saab.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمنت بالله صدق الله العظيم.
Subhanallah, Jazakumullah khair to Maulana Shoaib. Last week we said that this course has started in Ramadan for after Salatul Asr, but inshallah the plan is that even after Ramadan we want to continue this course and go through all of the essentials that we require. We will be going up to just about 15 minutes before Salatul Maghrib. Mufti Sahib will then start making dua for iftar. Just a quick, absolutely really quick recap for anybody that wasn't here last week. What we covered were the prerequisites of the prayer. So the things that need to be in place in order for you to perform your prayer. Really quickly, the first one was that one needs to be in a position where they do not need to perform ghusl. So they need to be pak, they need to have performed ghusl. The second was that the prayer requires wudu to be made. The third was the tahara in terms of the cleanliness of your body and the clothing that you're wearing. The next one was the cleanliness of the place that you are praying in. The next one was facing the qibla. The next one was the niyyah, so the intention for the prayer, and then to perform the prayer at the prescribed time. So if you're praying dhuhr, you know that you're praying dhuhr at the time that has been prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then finally we spoke about satr awra, which is basically the minimum amount of the body that needs to be covered. And this is not just for the prayer, this is even outside the prayer. So from the belly button to the knees needs to be covered as a minimum in order for one to pray, inshallah. And then we also looked at the types of water that could be used. Before I go on to that, I think a brother asked Mulana Ubay the question about seawater. That is seawater permissible? And yes, it is. You can use this for wudu. So the types of water we said were rainwater, well water, water from springs, or water that is the melting of snow. We said we could use this. Water that's left over after the drinking of a human, and halal animals as well. And the water that is impure, the water that you cannot use for wudu and ghusl, is all impure water. Juices that have been extracted from fruits and trees, and water that has changed in terms of its dimension of color, taste, or smell. Either that or they've become thick in terms of its consistency. We said that type of water cannot be used. And a small quantity of water which has najis in it, which is impure, which is either any of the sexual fluids or fluids of urine or stool. Today, Mullah Ubaid will now take over and we will talk about the absolute fundamentals of ghusl. If time permits, then we will move on to the fundamentals of wudu and those things that nullify the wudu, and then inshallah we'll see where we get to by the time we need to make dua, inshallah. Over to Mulana Ubaid.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد: وإن كنتم جنبا فاطهروا. صدق الله العظيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Brother Shazad has just recapped what we did last week, and inshallah the focus for today will be ghusl and how to cleanse yourself so that you are ready to perform salah. Before I begin, there's just a little bit of a disclaimer that I'd like to say, is that some of the topics might be a bit sensitive or taboo or awkward, but inshallah, because we are talking about the fiqh, then we should remove these barriers, and we should because we are here to the purpose of understanding the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so it is necessary for us to talk about these things so that we know how to perform our duties according to the religion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ayah I mentioned in the khutbah, He says that if you are impure, then you should purify yourselves. So what makes one impure? There are a few things that make one impure, and the first one will be the release of sexual fluid. Now, once this is released, then it is further upon somebody that they do a ghusl. Now there are different types of fluid, but of course we have kids in here, so I don't want to go through to that. But that will be the first cause of ghusl, including ihtilam, nocturnal emission. When this happens, then ghusl will become fard on a person, including if the ihtilam, when that happens, then a person has to look at the sign. When he wakes up, if he can see the sign of fluid there, then ghusl will be wajib. But if he even remembers that he had ihtilam and he doesn't see the sign of any fluid, then the ghusl will not be fard upon him. The second thing which will make ghusl fard on a person is intercourse. Regardless of whether the intercourse leads to release of any money or if it's in the state of arousal, intercourse will make ghusl fard upon a person. And the third one is when a kafir, they accept Islam, then they should do ghusl, because kafirs are impure, the kuffar are impure, and when they accept Islam, they should do ghusl. Now, there are certain things that the person who needs to do ghusl, there are certain things he cannot do. The first one is he cannot enter the masjid. So if a person is a junabi, he requires to do ghusl, then it is haram for him to enter the masjid. The second one is to make tawaf of the Holy Kaaba. So if a person requires a ghusl, then it is haram for him to make tawaf. The third one is to touch or to read the Holy Quran. It is impermissible, it is haram for a person who requires ghusl to read or touch the Holy Quran. Many people, when they touch the Holy Quran, if they are junub or they require wudu, what they'll do is they'll take their clothing or their shawl and they'll touch the Quran with it. Now, we need to make sure when we're doing this that we don't use a piece of our clothing, because when we use a piece of our clothing to take the Quran, then this is impermissible. Rather, we should use a separate cloth, or if we are using a shawl, we shouldn't wear it at the same time we are touching the Quran with it. With regards to reading the Quran, if somebody is in the state of janaba, it is impermissible to read it whether it be looking in or whether it be from memory. And it is also impermissible regardless of the language. If it is the Quran in Arabic, the actual Mus'haf, this is impermissible. If somebody is reading a translation in English, Urdu, Farsi, then this is also impermissible if he is in the state of janaba. And to enter the masjid is impermissible. And when we say masjid, we mean the actual area of the masjid, like this prayer hall or that prayer hall there. when somebody is junub now, common misconception, because we are in Ramadan as well, that a person needs to be, his fast will only be valid if he begins it in the state of cleanliness. Now, it should be that a person performs ghusl before the time of Fajr, so that the entire fast he is in the period of, or he is in the state of cleanliness. But if somebody is junub and he starts his fast, then his fast is still valid. Although if he leaves his ghusl, yes, and if he leaves his ghusl until after the time of Fajr Salah, yes, he will be sinful. But in regards to the fast will still be valid if one begins it as in the state of janaba. Now these situations which I mentioned, they were the fard ghusl, that somebody has to do ghusl because he is in the state of janaba. There is also the sunnah ghusl as well. When Huzur sallallahu alayhi wasallam following his sunnah, then it is sunnah for us to do ghusl, which is the day of Jummah, the two Eids, the day of Arafah, and when one puts on the ihram. To do ghusl in all of these times, then it is sunnah. What actually is ghusl? So we spoke about what makes ghusl fard, but how does one become pure? There are three faraid of ghusl. The first one is to rinse the mouth. Now, when we say rinse the mouth, we should make sure that we are rinsing the entire mouth. It is also obligatory upon us to remove anything which will hinder the water from reaching the inside of the mouth. For example, if one is eating and after eating then he does ghusl and he has food stuck in his mouth which prevents the water from reaching the places in his mouth, like in between his teeth, then the ghusl will not be valid. A person has to ensure that he removes the pieces of food or anything which hinders water from reaching. Yes, it does not mean that a person then he spends hours and hours trying to remove it, but he should try his utmost best effort to remove these pieces of food or whatever is stopping the water from reaching. For example, in this day and age, then if one flosses and brushes his teeth, then this will be more than sufficient to remove everything. And take in mind, when you're removing things, you should not be causing injury to yourself, because this is not required. You should just be trying your best to remove any pieces of food which is stuck in your mouth, so that the water will pass through the gaps in your teeth. Another ruling when we talk about ghusl is that it is fard to sniff water up the nose. This is the second fard. The first fard was to rinse the entire mouth up from the front of the teeth till the back of the throat, everything including the inside. And the second fard is to sniff water up the nose. Now if somebody has dried bogies or dried mucus in their nose, then it is also fard for them to remove this first before sniffing water, so that the water will reach the inside of the nose properly. And we sniff water, we take water into the nose, that it should reach the soft part of our nose, and we should not be leaving any bit in our nose dry. So this is the purpose, so the entire nose is wet until the soft part, until the bone, and this will fulfill the condition of sniffing water up the nose. The last and final fard of ghusl is to wash the entire body. So the entire body, whatever we can wash ostensibly, then we should wash this, and we should make sure every strand of hair is washed. And like I said, even with the mouth, we should remove any barriers. If we have any barriers on our body, for example, anything like a plaster or anything, something which, if the wound is healed and you can wash it, something which prevents, for example, a lot of women, they wear nail polish. This is a barrier, it will prevent the water from reaching. Every barrier must be removed first, then we wash the entire body, and this is what we call washing the entire body. This fulfills the fard of washing the entire body. And there's one ruling for some people. I know for some people in particular it will be difficult. For example, we have people who are bakers or painters, and they have constantly a barrier, or mechanics, they have the oily barrier. It will be difficult for them to every time remove it. So as long as they try their best, then their ghusl will be valid, even if there is residue remaining. But we have to remember this rule is for the professionals only. So if somebody decides tomorrow that he's going to paint his house, then he will have to, it is fard for him, because it is not his profession, to remove every barrier before doing his ghusl, and only then his ghusl will be valid. The sunnah method of ghusl, the actual method. So we've covered the faraid, we've covered what makes a ghusl fard, but what is the sunnah method of performing ghusl? The first thing is that a person should make his niyyah. He should make the intention that he is doing ghusl, and why he's doing ghusl, so that he can, which ghusl he's doing, the ghusl of janaba, the ghusl of sunnah. Bear in mind when we talk about niyyah, and for example, one is in the state of janaba, and it's also the day of Jummah. Now, if a person says, makes the niyyah that I am doing the ghusl of janaba and I am doing the ghusl of Jummah, then just in that one niyyah he will attain the reward of both of them. So this is a great ruling for us, for Ahnaf, that multiple ghusls, even if it's a Jummah, is the day of Arafah, and he has the ghusl of janaba, he makes all three the intention of them, then his intention will be fulfilled and his ghusl will be for each of them. So once he's made the niyyah, he should wash both of his hands up to the wrists, like in wudu when we wash our hands. The third thing is that then after washing his hands, he should wash his private parts, and if there is any najasat on the body, then he should remove this najasat. Then after removing the najasat and the private parts, then he should look to the entire body and he should remove any najasat that is on the rest of the body. Then he does wudu as normal. Then when you do wudu, you're fulfilling the condition of rinsing the mouth and sniffing water whilst you're doing wudu. Then a very important thing which some people may miss out after doing wudu is you should, with wet hands, you should rub the entire body. Now the purpose of this is if we have some dry parts of the body, we know generally how water behaves, how it flows, that if there's a part dry, it won't flow over it. But if you make that part wet first, the water will automatically find the other water and stick to it. We know the nature of the water. So it is very important that a person, he should rub his entire body before pouring water over it, so that all of the dry parts, they are now wet and the water will flow over it easily. After doing this, then the sunnah is to pour water over the right shoulder thrice, then pour water over the left shoulder thrice, then pour water over the head thrice. Now, when I say pour water thrice, the fuqaha have mentioned that if somebody is doing ghusl where there's running water, for example, now most people, they will do ghusl with the shower. What is the ruling of doing thrice there? The fuqaha mentioned that if a person stands or he lets the water run over him for some time, then this will fulfill the sunnah of washing or pouring thrice. After this, after pouring water over the entire head and body, then you should move slightly away, and then you can wash your feet again, and then your ghusl will be complete. It's important to note that when we are doing ghusl, we should not be facing the qibla, especially because we have our aura exposed. We should not be facing the qibla, as this is disrespectful. So a person should face towards the other side. Important thing to note, just to finish off the rules of ghusl, that the amount of water will not be the same for everybody. Some people will be able to do ghusl in less water because they may be skinnier, they may have thinner hair, whereas some people will require more water to do ghusl. So yes, we should not do it up to the extent we are wasting water, but we should be wary of how much water we use and are we using enough water. Some people may need to use less water naturally, but if somebody needs to use a lot of water, then it is necessary for them to use that enough amount of water so they can clean themselves properly. And inshallah, now the method of ghusl is complete. Inshallah, I'll pass back over to Shazad to talk about wudu.
It's mentioned in the state of fasting, if ghusl is necessitated, then we should.
When one is fasting, obviously we can't rinse our mouth or even sniff water up the nose too much, because the water will go down and it will, it'll go down our throat. And if this does happen accidentally, then it will break the fast. Some people, we use accidentally loosely. What does accidentally mean? Accidentally, when we say if you eat accidentally, your fast will not break. Accidentally here is the wrong word. The word should be forgetfully. If one forgets he is fasting, then the fast will not break. But if one is aware, so for example, I woke up in the morning, I know I'm fasting, and I go to the shower or I do wudu, I rinse my mouth and the water accidentally goes in, but it's not forgetfully because I'm aware I'm fasting. If it accidentally goes and I swallow some water, then the fast will break, even though it was an accident, because I was aware I was fasting. So we should be particularly careful when doing wudu and ghusl in Ramadan, that it is not obligatory for us to, gargle as we would outside of Ramadan when we rinse our mouth. We should instead just wash the front part of the mouth, rinse, gargle normally without taking the water to the back of the throat, because if the water does reach the back of the throat, then the fast will be invalidated. And similarly, when sniffing water up the nose, if somebody sniffs so hard that they can feel the water, drip to the back of the throat, this will also invalidate the fast. So we should be particularly careful in Ramadan.
And I think just the other point that Maulana Shoaib was making was that if somebody wakes up, let's just say at 11 a.m. and they've realized that they've had nocturnal ejaculation, that does not invalidate the fast. They can get up as you would, and they would be performing ghusl. Is that correct? No. So you realize that you've had a release, you would get up as you would normally, and then you would go and perform ghusl with the intention of purifying yourself. Jazakumullah khair to Maulana Ubaid for going over the essentials of ghusl. We'll see how much time we have, but now moving on to wudu. The key thing is, firstly, is for us to understand that there is no salah without wudu. Okay, and that needs to be obviously something that is a fundamental, foundational point. The next thing is that it's an ideal thing for wudu to be performed in the direction of the Qibla, if possible, in a high, clean place. You wouldn't want impurities and dirty things around you when you're performing wudu, naturally, because it's a process of purification. The other thing is that the Aimma have said that yes, it's about purifying your body, but the wudu is also a form of spiritual cleansing before you meet your Lord. This is the really important thing. Sometimes all of us do this, we rush our wudu, but what are we doing in fact? We are preparing to meet Allah. So we need to ensure that we take some time, don't waste water, and do things in accordance with the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, because this is the prep. When we have an important meeting at work, we do all of our notes and our preparations to ensure that we set a good example. The same way, the way we dress and the wudu that we perform needs to be at a standard so that we know that we're meeting Allah in our best state. And it's so easy to forget this. We all do this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to do that. Let's talk about the four fard. The way Maulana Ubaid spoke about the absolute fundamentals of ghusl, that if you neglect, then the ghusl is not counted. The same way wudu has the fard acts as well. The same way our salah, which we will hear later inshallah, has fard acts as well. That if these are left, if these are neglected, then it's not valid at all. The wudu is not valid. The first is the washing of the face from the forehead to the lower portion of the chin, and from one earlobe to another. Now, doing that once is fard, but you don't need to just do it in one motion. Maulana Shoaib reminded us a few weeks ago that some people are under the misconception that you need to do it in one go. No, you can have multiple use of water as long as the minimum requirement is covered of the forehead to the chin. and if you have a beard, I have a small beard, but if you have a beard, then you need to be able to pass your fingers through your beard and to ensure that the water passes through that area. Okay. The second is the washing of both of the arms, the right first and then the left, up until and including your elbows. And when you do this, the best way is to start with your hands and run the water through your fingers and then take it upwards in this motion, include your elbow and then bring it back down. That way, the water will flow, every area will become wet, inshallah. The next one is to at least cover a quarter of your head. We'll see that the sunnah position is for your head to be covered in its entirety and the motion, but at least a quarter of your head to be covered, which we call masa, right? At least a quarter of your head needs to be covered and it needs to be wet in order for the fard obligation to be covered, okay? And then it's the washing of the feet, right first and then left, again with as much water as is required to ensure that every part of your foot is washed. So it's up until and including your ankles. But sometimes we forget about running our the water and our fingers through our toes and our thumb. It's very important for the water to pass all of those areas, all those crunies, and all those areas in your feet, including the sole of your foot, behind your foot. These areas that we might forget, we need to ensure that it's wet in its entirety, up into and including the ankles. Yes. Well, we're going to move on to the sunnahs of the thing. I don't know if 5 more minutes. Bismillah. Now, as I said, there are 4 fards that we just went over. There are also the sunnah acts of the wudu that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam would do. And this now we shouldn't think that, oh, now I know the fard, I should only do the fard. It's easy to become lazy. We all do it. Everyone does it. Of course, if you're in a situation where, I remember once Mufti Sahib was giving the example of if Iqamah started and you know you're in a rush, or you're in a bit of a compromising situation where there's a lack of water, or whatever it may be, you should avoid just doing the fard wudu, okay? In your normal life, in your day-to-day practice, you should do the wudu with the sunnah positions as well, as the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam has told us, okay? And this adds barakah to everything we do. Anything we do, if we do it the way the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us to do it, he's perfection, isn't he? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, the first thing is the niyyah, the intention needs to be made. Again, it does not need to be verbal, it can be in your mind. Ya Allah, I am making the intention of wudu. Okay? Then the reciting of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is one of the sunnahs. The washing of the hands up to the wrist 3 times. Remember, for the fard, we said it was the washing of the full arm up until and including the elbow, but it was just once, as long as everything is covered. Here, the washing of the wrist 3 times. Okay, right up until the wrist 3 times. First right and then left. Then the brushing the teeth with the miswak. Okay, so you would have the miswak with you. Some scholars have said you can make it wet to have it a little bit moist in your mouth, and then you would perform the miswak and clean the inside of your mouth, similarly to what Brother Ubaid was saying. Then the gargling 3 times. This is when the water is taken, and this is when you're not fasting, up until your throat, and that area is entirely clean. When you are fasting, the water is just kept in the mouth area, and you don't take it anywhere, because there might be even a chance of the water passing lower. The passing water into the nostrils, again, when you're fasting, you keep it into the main nose area. You avoid for it to be passing any further and penetrating inside any further. The khilal of the beard. Okay, so those who are blessed to carry the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ on their face, the use of the fingers to pass through the beard with your fingers. These fingers, of course, need to be wet, and this fulfills a sunnah. The next is the khilal of the fingers and the toes. So making sure that you are passing water properly as a process through your fingers and your toes. The washing of each part 3 times is a sunnah. Okay? And you'll see this in the life of the Messenger of Allah, that the number 3 is given significance. Prophet ﷺ, this is, some say this is for certainty. The Prophet ﷺ would be making sure of everything. So, doing things 3 times. The masa of the whole head. Okay? So remember we said that the fard was just a quarter of the head, wasn't it? So the covering of the full head is the sunnah. The masa of both ears once, to ensure that both ears are covered. The wudu done in order. That is a sunnah. So not jumping from position to position. Also not doing things whilst you're doing your wudu. So you can't be performing your wudu and brushing your teeth and then having a chat and doing all sorts. The thing, as I said, you were doing something in preparation to meet your Lord. So to do things systematically, in order, and to do it with full attention. Okay? And then the washing of each part, one after the other, without pause. So as I said, not bringing other things into it. The idea is that one part doesn't become dry before you move on to the next part. That's the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. That when you would move from one motion to another, the previous motion would still be wet with water. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. We'll stop there and then we will move on to the acts that will nullify, that will break the wudu, and we'll talk a little bit about tayammum inshallah in next week's session. If there's anybody that you know that you may feel benefit from this, inshallah, please bring them along. We're going to continue this outside Ramadan as well, inshallah. That's the intention. Our teachers have given us their du'as and have facilitated this process. So jazakumullah khair for attending, and inshallah now Ida Mawlana Shuaib al Mutashakil will make dua. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام.
اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد معدن الجود والكرم وآله وبارك وسلم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
ما شاء الله. سبحان الله.